The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a massive shell, its walls covered in the flags and symbols of 12 alien species who had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone at the speaking platform, a single human woman facing the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. She was 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too much disappointment to show any surprise at what was happening today. The council members sat in their elevated seats arranged in a half circle above her, looking down as they always did when addressing humanity's representative. High Arbiter Kos occupied the central throne, his insectoid body ancient and clicking, with mechanical parts that kept him alive long past his natural years. His compound eyes reflected the light of 1,000 stars projected on the ceiling above them all. The matter has been decided, Kos announced, his translator device turning his chittering speech into words Elena could understand. The human colonies in the Kepler expanse are hereby revoked and transferred to the Tyranny Consortium, effective immediately. Elena felt the words hit her like physical blows, but she did not let her face change. 300 years of service to this council, 300 years of humanity giving everything they had to the galactic community. And this was how it ended. Counselor Vethra of the Tyranny leaned forward in his seat, his reptilian face showing what passed for a smile among his species. Had wanted those colonies for decades. The Kepler expanse held more rare minerals than any other region in the galaxy, and humanity had spent 50 years building the infrastructure to mine them. Now, all of that work would belong to the Tyranny. The human delegation may file an appeal within the standard 30-day period, Kos continued, his tone suggesting he did not expect such an appeal to matter. Elena knew it would not matter. Either humanity had filed over 40,000 appeals and grievances in 3 centuries. Not a single one had ever been resolved in their favor. She thought about the colonists in the Kepler expanse right now, families who had built homes and raised children on worlds they had transformed from barren rocks into living gardens. They would receive the news within hours. They would have 30 days to abandon everything they had created. The Tyranny would move in before the human ships had even cleared the system. Does the human ambassador wish to speak? Kos asked, and there was something in his voice that might have been curiosity. Perhaps he expected her to beg. Perhaps he expected her to threaten. Perhaps he expected tears or anger or desperate bargaining. Lena looked up at the 12 species arrayed before her, and she saw them clearly for the first time in her long career. The Tyranny who had bribed half the council for this vote, the Rilshang, who had accepted human agricultural technology for free, and never once voted in humanity's favor. The Orvani bankers, who used human financial systems while blocking human membership in their trade guilds. The Seath warriors, who had let human soldiers die in the hegemony wars while keeping their own troops safe. Behind the lines, 12 species who had taken from humanity for 300 years while giving nothing but contempt in return. Elena drew a slow breath and spoke in a voice that carried no emotion at all. Very well, she said. We wish you prosperity. Counselor Vethra's smile faltered. For just a moment, that was not the response anyone had expected. High Arbiter Kos tilted his ancient head as if trying to understand what he had just heard. Does the ambassador have nothing more to say? He asked. Nothing more, Elena replied, and she gathered her data tablets. From the speaking platform, she walked toward the chamber doors. Without looking back, her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen over the council. The doors opened and closed behind her, and she was gone in the corridor outside. The rest of the human diplomatic staff waited for her. There were 23 of them. Men and women who had devoted their lives to representing humanity among the stars. They looked at her with questions in their eyes. "Pack everything," Elena told them, her voice still calm and steady. "We leave tonight." "Ambassador," one of the younger diplomats said, "should we not stay to file the appeal and fight this decision through proper channels?" Elena stopped walking and turned to face her staff. "We have been fighting through proper channels for 300 years, she said. 40,000 grievances filed and not one resolved in our favor. 40,000 times we asked for justice, and 40,000 times we were ignored." She paused and let those words sink in. "The Council has made their position clear," she continued. "Humanity is useful but not valued, welcome to serve but not to be heard, good enough to bleed for them but not good enough to be treated fairly. Then what do we do?" Another diplomat asked. Elena looked at each of them in turn before she answered. "We stop asking for what they will never give us," she said. "We stop serving those who see us as tools to be used and discarded. We stop pretending that one more appeal, or one more grievance, or one more century of faithful service will change anything." "We leave?" Someone whispered. "We leave," Elena confirmed. "Quietly and completely, and without drama or threats or ultimatums." By morning, the human embassies on every major station stood empty. The lights were off, and the doors were sealed, and the human flags had been taken down and packed away. Trade missions closed without warning. Cultural exchange programs ended overnight. Human technical advisors simply did not show up for work. The Council received a single formal notification from Earth's government that read, "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for 3 centuries of partnership and wishes all member species peace and prosperity in their future endeavors. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all Council activities and agreements. We bear no ill will and seek no conflict. We simply choose to walk a different path." High Arbiter Koss read the message 3 times before he believed it was real. "They are bluffing," Councillor Vethra declared. "This is theater designed to make us feel guilty and reverse our decision about the Kepler expanse." "Perhaps," Koss replied. But his compound eyes were troubled. He had ruled the Council for 400 years, and he had seen many species come and go. He had never seen one leave like this. There were no warships massing at the borders. No threats of retaliation, no demands for negotiation, just silence, just empty offices and dark windows. And a polite message wishing them well. Something about that silence made the ancient arbiter deeply uneasy, but he pushed the feeling aside and told himself that the humans would return within a month. Begging to be let back in, he was wrong. The humans never came back, and by the time the Council understood what that meant, it was far too late to undo the damage they had done. 6 months passed, and the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had predicted. The first signs were small. So small that most species did not notice them at all on the agricultural worlds of the Rilsham matriarchy. The massive machines that cleaned and restored the soil began to malfunction. These machines had been gifts from humanity decades ago, freely given to help the Rilshan recover from a terrible famine that had killed millions of their people. The Rilshan had accepted the machines gladly, but they had never bothered to learn how they worked. Why would they need to learn when human technicians had always been available to fix any problems? But now there were no human technicians. The Rilshan sent requests to Earth asking for assistance, but the requests vanished into silence after 2 weeks without a response. The matriarch herself sent a formal demand through Council channels insisting that humanity fulfill their obligations. The only reply was an automated message. "Thank you for your communication. Humanity is no longer participating in Council affairs. We wish you peace and prosperity." The soil restoration machines broke down one by one across 12 worlds. Crops began to fail in fields that had been fertile for generations. The Roshan scientists tried to repair the machines themselves, but the technology was beyond their understanding. They had become dependent on human engineering without ever realizing it. Far across the galaxy, the Orvani banking clans faced a different kind of crisis. The complex computer programs that managed currency exchange between species had been written by human economists. These programs made billions of calculations every second, adjusting prices and values to keep the galactic economy stable without regular updates from their human creators. The programs began to drift. Small errors accumulated into larger errors. Exchange rates fluctuated wildly from day to day. A merchant who was wealthy in the morning might find himself poor by evening, not because of any business failure, but simply because the numbers had shifted beneath him. The Ravani demanded that humanity hand over the source codes for these programs. Earth did not respond. They cannot do this, the chief banker of the Alvani declared to the council. These programs affect all of us. They have no right to withhold them. High Arbiter Koss sent formal summons to Earth, demanding that human representatives appear before the council to address these concerns. The summons went unanswered. He sent another summons and another. Each one disappeared into the void like a stone dropped into a bottomless well. The Tyranny Consortium, so proud of their victory in claiming the Kepler Expanse, discovered their own problems. Their colony ships had been using star charts created and maintained by human astronomers. These charts mapped every gravity well, every asteroid field, every danger in the spaces between stars, but the charts had not been updated in months. On the 73rd day after humanity's withdrawal, a Tyranny colony ship carrying 4,000 settlers entered an uncharted gravity anomaly. The ship was crushed like an egg in a fist. There were no survivors. Counselor Vethra received the news in his private chambers, and he felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had wanted the Kepler Expanse so badly that he had bribed half the council to take it from the humans, now his own people were dying because the humans were no longer there to keep them safe. He told himself it was not his fault. He told himself the humans were being petty and vengeful, but deep down he knew the truth. The humans had not sabotaged anything. They had not destroyed the star charts or broken the banking programs or disabled the farming machines. They had simply stopped maintaining them. They had stopped giving freely of their knowledge and their labor. Without that constant giving, everything was falling apart. 6 more months passed, and the galaxy slid deeper into chaos. The word spread through every species and every world. The humans were gone, and they were not coming back. Some refused to believe it. They sent ships to the edge of Sol system, to the space where Earth and her colonies waited. What they found there shocked them more than anything else. The entire system was surrounded by a barrier of energy, unlike anything anyone had seen before. Ships could not pass through it. Sensors could not penetrate it. Communication signals bounced off it like light off a mirror. The humans had sealed themselves inside their own territory, and they had done it with technology that made the Council's best scientists weep with frustration. How did they develop this? The Seath weapons masters demanded. We have been watching their military technology for centuries, and we never saw anything like this. But that was the problem, was it not? The Council had been watching human military technology. Because they feared human aggression, they had never bothered to watch human defensive technology, because they never imagined humans would want to defend themselves from the Council. They had never imagined humans would want to leave. Now the humans were gone, and the galaxy was learning just how much it had depended on them. Medical supplies began to run low on dozens of worlds. Human pharmaceutical companies had provided cheap medicine to anyone who needed it, never patenting their discoveries. never restricting access to Council species, had used these medicines for generations without ever learning how to make them. Now stockpiles were running out and diseases that had been controlled for centuries began to spread again. Pirates grew bold in the outer territories. Human mercenary companies had patrolled the trade lanes for decades, keeping shipping safe for a fraction of what Council military ships would have charged with the humans gone. The pirates realized there was no one left to stop them. Cargo ships were raided, their crews killed or enslaved. Their goods stolen. Trade routes that had been safe for 100 years became death traps. The Council held emergency sessions every week, but nothing they decided seemed to help. We must force the humans to return. Council of Vethra demanded, send a fleet to Sol and break through their barrier. With what fleet? The Seath military commander replied, his voice bitter. Half our ships are falling apart because human engineers are no longer maintaining the reactors they designed for us. We cannot fight a war when our own vessels are breaking down. High Arbiter Kos sat on his ancient throne and listened to his Council argue and blame each other and demand solutions that no one could provide. He had ruled for 400 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans had not declared war. They had not fired a single shot. They had simply walked away, and in walking away, they had revealed a truth that the Council had never wanted to face. The galaxy had not been using humanity. Humanity had been carrying the galaxy on its shoulders, and now that the burden had been set down, everything was beginning to collapse. Kos looked at the empty seat where the human ambassador had once sat, and he wondered if it was too late to apologize. He wondered if the humans would even listen if he tried, but he did not try. His pride would not let him, and so the collapse continued, day by day and world by world, while the humans waited in silence behind their impenetrable wall. The second year of the Great Silence brought the word that everyone feared, but no one wanted to speak. That word was dependency, human dependency. The scholars called it. They spoke the phrase in whispers, like it was something shameful, something embarrassing, something that proud galactic species should never have to admit. But the truth could no longer be hidden. Every species in the Council had become dependent on humanity in ways they had never understood until the humans were gone. Counselor Unara of the Seath Dominion was the Yoan to bid this first to truly investigate how deep this dependency. When she was old for her species, nearly 200 years, and she had served on the Council for most of that time. Unlike most of her colleagues, she had always paid attention to the humans. She had noticed how they gave freely when other species demanded payment. She had noticed how they worked quietly in the background while others took credit. She had noticed how their grievances disappeared into the bureaucracy, never to be seen again. Now she decided to find out exactly what had been done to the humans. Over 3 centuries of partnership, the archives were vast, containing records of every Council decision since the government was founded. Thousands of years ago, Yanara began to search through them, looking for anything related to humanity. What she found made her sick. There were 40,000 entries, 40,000 grievances, complaints, appeals, and requests filed by human representatives. Over 300 years, she began reading them one by one. The first grievance was from 280 years ago. A human colony had been raided by Tarani pirates, and the colonists had asked for Council protection. The request had been denied because the Tarani consortium objected to Council ships operating near their territory. 30,000 humans had been left to defend themselves with whatever weapons they could find. 2,000 of them had died before the pirates moved on to easier targets. The second grievance was from 275 years ago. Human scientists had developed a new form of clean energy and had shared it freely with all Council species through Avani banking. Clans had then patented the technology and began charging license fees to anyone who wanted to use it. Including the humans who had invented it, humanity had protested this theft of their own creation. The council had ruled that the Orvani had followed proper procedures and the patent would stand grievance. After grievance told the same story, human colonies seized by species who wanted their resources, human technologies stolen and sold back to them at profit, human soldiers sent to fight in wars while other species kept their troops safe. Human requests for voting rights on the council denied year after year after year. Yanara read for 3 days without sleep when she finally stopped. She had gone through less than a tenth of the total records, but she had seen enough. She called an emergency session of the council and demanded to be heard. "What is so urgent?" Councillor Vethra asked, his voice annoyed. "We have more important matters to discuss. The trade routes are collapsing, and the Rilshan are facing famine." "This is why the trade routes are collapsing," Yanara replied, her voice hard as stone. "This is why the Rilshan are starving. This is why everything is falling apart." She activated the chamber's display screens and showed them the records she had found. 40,000 grievances. She said, "In 300 years, humanity filed 40,000 formal complaints through proper council channels." "So what?" Vethra demanded. "Every species files complaints." "It means nothing. Every complaint was denied," Yanara continued. "Not one single grievance was ever resolved in humanity's favor. Not one single appeal was ever granted. Not one single wrong was ever made right." The chamber fell silent. "I have read thousands of these records," Yanara said. "I have seen how we treated them. I have seen colonies stolen, technologies taken, soldiers sacrificed, and rights denied, over and over and over for 300 years. She turned to face High Arbiter Koss directly. "They did not leave because we took the Kepler Expanse," she said. "They left because the Kepler Expanse was the 40,000th time we proved that we would never treat them fairly." Koss said nothing. His compound eyes stared at the records scrolling across the screens. "There is more," Yanara continued. "I found records from the Hegemony Wars. Do you remember the Battle of Karth Prime? That was over 200 years ago," the Sith military commander said. "What does it matter now?" "At Karth Prime, human and Sith forces were ordered to hold a defensive line against the Hegemony fleet," Yanara explained. "The humans were placed in the forward positions while our Sith soldiers were kept in reserve." She paused to let that sink in. The Hegemony broke through the forward positions and killed 18,000 human soldiers. She continued. "Our Sith troops then retreated without engaging the enemy. They left the remaining humans to die so that our own people could escape safely. That was a tactical decision," the military commander protested. "The commanders on the ground made the choice to preserve our forces. The commanders on the ground were following orders from this council," Yanara replied. "I found the communications. We told them to let the humans take the casualties and save our own troops. And when the humans filed a grievance about this," she asked, "when they asked why their soldiers had been sacrificed while ours fled, we told them it was a regrettable necessity of war, and we denied their request for an investigation." The chamber was completely silent. Now every council member stared at the screens, or at the floor, or at anywhere except at each other. "We did not lose our partners," Yanara said, her voice heavy with shame. "We abused them. We used them. We took everything they offered and gave nothing in return except contempt." She looked around the chamber at her colleagues. "They stayed for 300 years despite how we treated them," she said. 300 years of patience and hope and believing that eventually we would do the right thing. And we never did, she finished. Not once in 3 centuries did we treat them as equals. Not once did we show them the respect they earned 1,000 times over. We took their gifts and called them weak for giving. We took their sacrifices and called them foolish for serving. Is it any wonder they finally walked away? Counselor Vethra stood up, his reptilian face twisted with anger. "You blame us for their abandonment?" he demanded. "They are the ones who left. They are the ones who sealed themselves away and refused to help. They are the ones watching us suffer and doing nothing. They are doing exactly what we taught them to do," Inara replied. "We taught them that fairness would never come from this council. We taught them that their contributions would never be valued. We taught them that no matter how much they gave, we would always demand more." She turned away from Vethra and faced the full council. "They learned their lesson," she said. "The question is whether we will learn ours." High Arbiter Koss remained silent through all of this. His ancient body still as stone, but inside his mind, something was breaking. 400 years he had ruled this council. 400 years. He had made decisions that shaped the fate of billions, and now he was beginning to understand that many of those decisions had been terribly, unforgivably wrong. The humans had trusted them, and the council had betrayed that trust 40,000 times. Now, they were paying the price, and Koss was not sure the price would ever stop being paid. The third year of the Great Silence brought fire and blood to worlds that had known peace for centuries. The Torani Consortium was the first to break their economy had been dying slowly since the humans withdrew. The mines in the Kepler expanse sitting empty because no one knew how to operate the human equipment that had been left behind. Trade ships refused to enter Torani space because the star charts were outdated and the routes were dangerous. Credits became worthless as the galactic banking systems continued to fail. Unemployment spread like a disease through every Torani world. Hungry families watched their children grow thin, while the corporate lords who ruled the consortium continued to live in luxury, and everyone knew whose fault it was. The riots began on Torani Prime, the capital world of the consortium. They started in the lower districts where the workers lived, the ones who had lost their jobs and their savings and their hope. "You stole from the humans and doomed us all," they screamed as they marched through the streets. "You took their colonies and drove them away, and now we are paying for your greed." Counselor Vethra tried to address the crowds from the safety of his tower. He told them that the humans were to blame, that humanity had abandoned the galaxy out of spite, that the consortium had done nothing wrong. The crowd did not believe him. They had heard the stories from the council archives that Counselor Inara had made public. They knew about the 40,000 grievances. They knew about the stolen technologies and the sacrificed soldiers and the centuries of injustice, and they knew that their leaders had been the worst offenders of all. The mob stormed the corporate towers. 3 days later, Vethra tried to flee, but his own guards turned against him. They dragged him into the streets where the crowd was waiting. What happened next was not quick, and it was not kind across Torani space. Similar scenes played out on world after world. The corporate lords who had bribed the council for the Kepler expanse were hunted down by their own people. Some were killed. Some were imprisoned. Some managed to escape on ships bound for nowhere. The consortium as a political entity simply ceased to exist. It collapsed into chaos and civil war as different factions fought over the ruins. The other council species watched in horror as one of their own was torn apart from within. This could happen to us, the Rilshan matriarch whispered to her advisors. Our people are hungry and angry and looking for someone to blame. She was right to be afraid. On Rilshan agricultural worlds, farmers who had lost everything gathered in the cities. They demanded to know why their leaders had never learned to maintain the soil. Machines themselves, they demanded to know why the matriarch had accepted human help for decades without ever planning for the day when that help might end. The Rilshan government survived, but only by promising massive reforms and publicly admitting their failures one by one. The council species faced their own reckonings. They Ovani banking clans were forced to open their records and reveal how much human technology they had stolen and profited. From over the centuries, the Seath Dominion conducted public investigations into the commanders who had sacrificed human soldiers during the hegemony wars everywhere. People were asking the same questions. How did we let this happen? How did we become so dependent on one species while treating them so badly? How did we not see what we were doing? High Arbiter Kos watched his carefully ordered galaxy descend into chaos, and he knew that he could not hide any longer. He called a full session of the council, one of the last that would be held with all 12 original members. Many of the council seats were now occupied by new representatives, the old ones having fled or been removed by their own government's Kos stood before them, and he did something he had not done in 400 years of rule. He admitted that he had been wrong. Councillor Yanara showed us the records, he began, his voice carrying through the great chamber. 40,000 grievances filed by humanity over 300 years. 40,000 requests for justice and fairness and simple respect. He paused, his ancient body trembling with the weight of what he was about to say. I dismissed most of those grievances personally. He continued. I signed the orders that denied their appeals. I approved the decisions that took their colonies and stole their technologies and sacrificed their soldiers. I told myself I was being practical, he said. I told myself that humanity was a minor species, whose concerns did not matter compared to the needs of our greater civilization. I was a fool. The chamber was utterly silent. We did not lose our partners. Kos said, echoing Yanara's words from months before. We drove them away. Every time they asked for fairness, we offered them silence. Every time they asked for respect, we gave them contempt. He lifted one of his mechanical arms and reached for the Arbiter seal that hung on his thorax. The seal had been worn by the leader of the Lai Council for 8,000 years. It was a symbol of ultimate authority, of wisdom, of the right to guide galactic civilization. Kos removed it and held it in his trembling claw. I am not worthy of this, he said. I never was. I only thought I was because no one ever challenged me. No one ever forced me to look at what I was doing. The humans did not challenge me either, he added. They simply stopped participating in my injustice. They walked away and left me to face the consequences of my actions. This is that consequence. He placed the seal on the speaking platform where Ambassador Vasquez had stood 3 years ago. I resign my position as High Arbiter, he announced. I asked the council to elect a new leader, one who will be worthy of the trust that we betrayed. Then he walked out of the chamber for the last time. Doors closed behind him, and he disappeared into history, a cautionary tale that would be told for generations behind him. The remaining council members stared at the abandoned seal and wondered what would happen next. They'd spent 3 years blaming the humans for leaving. Now they could no longer escape the truth. The humans had left because staying was unbearable. The galaxy was burning because its leaders had failed, and the only way forward was to become something better than they had been before. Whether they could actually do that remained to be seen, but for the first time since the Great Silence began, there was at least a chance. The old ways were dead. Kos had killed them with his confession now. The surviving species would have to decide what would rise from the ashes. They could only hope that whatever they built would be worthy of those who had finally lost patience with their failures. 50 years had passed since Ambassador Elena Vasquez spoke her final words to the Galactic Council. The galaxy was a different place. Now the Galactic Concord still existed, but it was smaller and weaker than it had been before the Great Silence. 3 of the original 12 species had collapsed into civil wars that still burned across their homeworlds. Others had survived, but they had been forced to change. in ways that would have been unthinkable 50 years ago. The new Constitution was called the Charter of Remembrance. It had been written in the years following High Arbiter Koss's resignation, forged in the fires of collapse and reconstruction. Every article in the Charter was designed to prevent what had happened to humanity from ever happening again. No grievance could be dismissed without a full tribunal review. No species could be denied voting rights based on their size or military power. No technology freely given could be patented or restricted by another party. Every provision was an admission of guilt, a confession carved in law. The great chamber where the council met had been rebuilt after the Tyranny riots destroyed the original. In the center of the new chamber stood a monument that had not existed before. Was a Benubi statue of a human figure cast in bronze, standing tall and facing the empty seat where Earth's delegation had once sat. The figure was not modeled after any specific person. It represented all of humanity, the billions who had served and sacrificed and given without recognition for 300 years. The plaque beneath the statue read, "They asked only for fairness. We gave them reasons to leave. May we never forget the cost of our silence." Every new council member was required to stand before that statue and read those words aloud as part of their oath of office. It was a reminder that would never be allowed to fade. Every year on the anniversary of Ambassador Vasquez's departure, the council held a ceremony of remembrance. They read selections from the 40,000 grievances that had been ignored. They spoke the names of human soldiers who had died in battles that could have been avoided. They acknowledged publicly the debts that could never be repaid. Some species thought the ceremonies were excessive, even shameful. Why do we continue to humiliate ourselves? They asked. The humans are gone, and they are not coming back. What purpose does this self-flagellation serve? The answer was always the same. We do this so that we remember, the council would reply. We do this so that we never convince ourselves it was not so bad. We do this so that the young ones growing up today understand why the galaxy is the way it is, and the galaxy was very different indeed. Humanity's absence had forced every species to become more self-reliant. Roshan had finally learned to build and maintain their own agricultural technology. The Olvani had developed their own financial systems from scratch. The Seath had restructured their military to never again depend on others to do their fighting. It had been painful and expensive, and many had died during the years of transition. But the species that survived were stronger for it, more humble, more aware of how easily great civilizations could fall. Of course, there were still those who hoped the humans would return. Expeditions were sent to the edge of Sol system every decade, ships carrying messages of apology and pleas for reconciliation. The barrier around human space was still there, unchanged. After 50 years, ships could not pass through its sensors, could not penetrate it. Every message sent into that barrier vanished without response. Some scientists theorized that the humans had developed technology far beyond anything the council could imagine. Others believed they had simply left the galaxy entirely, traveling to places no one could follow. But there were also the rumors traders who traveled to the far edges of explored space, came back with strange stories. They spoke of uncharted regions where new civilizations were rising, species that the council had never contacted, worlds that were being terraformed and developed with impossible speed. And they spoke of visitors to these regions, ships that came from nowhere and departed the same way. Beings who called themselves Terrans, who offered help freely and asked for nothing in return. They are building something out there, one trader reported to the council. Something vast and new. They have found species that we never knew existed, and they are welcoming them, teaching them helping them grow. Why? The council asked, why would they help strangers after what we did to them? The trader had thought about that question for a long time before answering, because that is who they are, he finally said. They helped us for 300 years, despite how we treated them. They did not stop being generous when they left. They just found others who might appreciate it more. The council received this news in silence. Some felt anger that humanity was sharing their gifts with unknown species, while the Uboli council struggled with the consequences of their departure. Others felt only sadness. A deep and lasting grief for what had been lost Ambassador Yanara, now elderly and retired from public service, spoke at the anniversary ceremony that year. I spent years reading the records of our relationship with humanity, she said to the assembled representatives. 40,000 grievances, 300 years of history, millions of pages documenting every interaction between our species. And do you know what I found most often in those records? She asked. The chamber was silent, waiting. Thank you, Yanara said. Over and over again, humanity said thank you. They thanked us for allowing them to join the council. They thanked us for accepting their help. They thanked us for opportunities that we now know we never truly gave them. They were grateful to us, even as we mistreated them. She continued. They believed the best of us, even when we gave them the worst. They kept hoping we would change even after we proved 1,000 times that we would not. That is what we lost, she said, her voice heavy with regret. We did not just lose their technology or their labor or their military support. We lost the people who wanted to believe in us, who wanted to be our partners, who wanted nothing more than to be treated with basic fairness and respect. They would have given us everything, she finished, and we threw it away for a handful of mining colonies and the satisfaction of feeling superior to someone. She looked at the bronze statue standing silent in the center of the chamber. I hope they found what they were looking for out there, she said. I hope they found species who appreciate them, civilizations that value their gifts, partners who treat them as equals. I hope they are happy, because we certainly did not deserve them. The ceremony ended as it always did, with a moment of silence for what had been lost. Then the representatives returned to their duties, to the endless work of maintaining a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself through arrogance and cruelty, and somewhere beyond the barrier around Sol, beyond the edges of known space, in regions that the Council might never reach. Humanity continued forward building, teaching, growing, becoming something new they had learned from their time with the Council. They had learned that power could be used to help or to harm. They had learned that generosity without boundaries would be exploited. They had learned that some relationships could not be fixed no matter how much patience was applied, and they had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply walk away and let the guilty live with what they had done. The galaxy would remember them. That was enough.